Can't hear you. I can't hear you. I can hear you.
Blessings, blessings, blessings. Thank you all for being here. We are excited. Just give us a few minutes to share the broadcast, and we would like for you all to share as well. We have a great topic today. We're going to talk about when your parents are spiritual parents. So I have Elizabeth Green here, my spiritual sister in the Lord, an apostle, and just a fun believer in the Lord. She's going to be sharing her testimony and sharing the joys and challenges related to this topic. So please share, share, share. And we are going to get started. We are on YouTube and Clubhouse. So if you are on Facebook, just be mindful of that. If you have any questions while we are doing this broadcast, please ask your questions. I believe that spiritual parenting is a topic that we need to discuss. I actually have a webinar coming up on Saturday, July 30th. That's this Saturday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. discussing understanding spiritual parent-child relationships and even sharing the biblical foundations of that and helping people to navigate through those type of relationships and to be healed from them. And so that's going to be a more personable platform where you get to ask questions as well, but also you will get any healing, deliverance, and just further revelation and guidance concerning your experiences or any experiences that you want to have. If you believe that you are a spiritual father or mother, that webinar is for you. If you believe you're a spiritual child, that webinar is for you. If you are already in these type of relationships but really need spiritual understanding, it's for you. If you need healing, that webinar is for you. Okay, and so I would encourage you to sign up. If you cannot be at the webinar this Saturday, you can still sign up and receive the replay. You will receive 2 ebooks, and you also will receive the MP3s and the videos from that webinar. It would also be available later on teachable.com under my Kingdom Wellness Counseling and Mentoring Center platform. So please make sure that you make this topic a priority. There are so many myths and misperceptions around spiritual parenting and covenant relationships. People have been hurt, they have been hazed, they have been abused, they've been in cult-like experiences. But I want to say, as an example, of a good spiritual mom and also of one who has a good spiritual mother, that there are healthy spiritual covenant relationships. And if you follow my page, you will see various videos that have done over the last couple of weeks. And in the last week and even Tuesday, I interviewed some spiritual parents and they were excellent. So if you want to receive further wisdom, even as you would attend our webinar, go back and listen to those topics. I also have a book coming out on this topic Saturday. It's going to be released, shift right now, on understanding spiritual parenting relationships. So get the book so that you can have guidance. It's literally a book that you can go through with your spiritual children or spiritual parent. And that way you will know you're doing things from a biblical perspective. Because when I became a spiritual parent, I didn't have any biblical perspective and I had to seek God for it. So that's my little introduction as I was waiting on you all to share. I'm going to say share again. My name is Taquita Baker, and you can learn more about me at kswu.net. I am a counselor, a deliverer, a spiritual warrior, and just a child of God. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
So So that's just a little bit about me. I do provide deliverance, inner healing, counseling, training, and equipping on online and face to face. So if you want to sign up for those services, you can log on to kswu.net. I'm going to give Apostle Liz a moment to introduce herself, and then we're going to get started.
All
Go
right.
ahead.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Liz Green Jackson, and I'm a Cali girl, but I am the daughter and spiritual daughter of two powerful preachers, and I'm excited to be here. I think that there are often conversations that are missed and neglected from PKs, and I'm going to be talking from a PK perspective, which is preacher's kid for life on my PKs. But there's another side of the balance. So whether you're called to be a spiritual parent or you are a spiritual son and daughter, this hopefully the things that we share will help you to pray for both parts, but also how to navigate that part when you're looking at natural children who are also spiritual children and also spiritual siblings, and the boundaries or lack thereof, and the healing or trauma that comes with that process if it's not done in a healthy, balanced way. So that's it. I love to have fun. I'm gonna keep it 100. I shoot straight from the hip. Anything I say on here, I say to your face. I love you for the love of the Lord.
She telling the truth. All right. So let's get started. So my first question for you, Liz, is can you share your experience as having being a spiritual child to your natural parents? Because often when we think about spiritual parenting, we think about those who they are spiritual parents to those who don't, who natural parents didn't really nurture them effectively in God, or they have some nurturing, but then that spiritual parent come along and take them to the next level. And I always like to say that your spiritual family do not take the place of your natural family. And that actually, when we have parents that are natural parents that actually raise their children up in God, they are a representative of how we are supposed to be and what God had ordained before the fall of man. But the fall of man brought in these altered, sins, transgressions, and so our free will allow us to raise our children the way we want to. Free will also brought in sin, all of these other things that come into being a factor in our family line. And so often when God is considering spiritual relationships, he's trying to restore that family line into the fullness of what he wanted before the fall of man. So can you share on that?
So I won't say we were an anomaly. And when I say we, I mean my siblings and I. But what I will say is we were one of the few families that I was able to speak to intimately. And I knew more than I knew that did not. And what I mean by that is we were one of the few whose parents actually practiced what they preach, whether they were in the pulpit, in public, or behind closed doors. So I really didn't understand the benefit or the blessing of having both my natural parents being my spiritual and my natural parents godly. Like it was a blessing to us until maybe in my adulthood when I began to then have my wavering moments, or what I like to call character building moments. But for us growing up, it was just norm. So one thing you will see with my parents, the word of God doesn't change for us, and they don't change the word of God for us. So wrong is wrong, right is right. There was never an excuse. If we were acting raggedy, if we didn't get snatched in the natural, we definitely got snatched in the spiritual. And it was usually both. And the natural one automatically caused us to run to God because we was like, Father, save us. What's getting ready to happen now? They done snatched us, right? So there were certain things and boundaries because of parenting and because of love that it wasn't this thing. But what happened was as we get older and life experiences happen, I found that the balance of it was there were days where I'd be like, I need my mom, not the bishop, or I need my papa, not the pastor, or I need both. Or there were other times when my parents would be like, I'm not your daddy, I'm not your mama, I'm your pastor, I'm your bishop, and you need to hear what I'm telling you. And it came with a different weight. Not that I didn't respect mom and dad, because mom and dad have wisdom and they have an authority, but there's a spiritual authority that comes with parenting because they're operating in a different discernment and in a different their sighting is different, right? You're seeing things from a different place. And so the wisdom, the instruction, the rebuke, the comfort, or whatever else, it hits different. And so I think growing up was being able to find that balance. What I would say to parents who are spiritual parents and natural parents, don't be so holy you're intangible and you forget what it's like just to be like, Mom, I want to go to the school dance. No, you're going to be here every time the church open and every time the doors close. Like, don't be that parent. And don't be the one that is so removed. Like allow your children to have the balance of in the spirit and in the natural, right? The word says God looks for those who will worship him in spirit and in truth. And the truth is, yes, the truth of God, but the truth that I have flesh, that I'm hungry. So don't take me to 12 services and then expect me to worship the same and you ain't fed me all day. You know what I mean? Like, don't do that. Let's not do that, because we've been victims of that. I've been victims of 7 services, So, there's some things that there has to be a balance. And while it seems like nothing, the more you put church activities in front of the basic necessities of, I just want mommy and dad time, I just want family time, I want to go and have a picnic, like my friends are having a picnic with their friends, or we want to just have fun and go to the movies, or maybe today I want to watch a horror movie and it may have a cuss word or two, but I don't want to get rebuked. And everything don't have to end and begin in the church, right? Because what happens is, if everything is only about ministry, only about this, I begin to feel resentful because there's no balance. Because the rest of my world isn't that. I still got to function in school. I still got to be able to have people skills to navigate. I still have to go to work. And so my whole world doesn't function like that's not realistic. And so it causes wounds. You get rejection, abandonment, anger, hatred. Then I start looking for other satisfaction, and I look for what I'm not getting from you. And so you have to have that balance. And my parents, they did an amazing job of making sure at times we were able to escape the isms of the church, just to have family time, to go have a movie, to have dinner and things like that, to bring balance. And so I think that's very, very important when you're parenting or a sibling or receiving that. Understand the necessity of balance. And I think a lot of times in ministry, we don't have balance. It's okay to take Sunday off so that you're not burnt out and just rest. My motto, and all my people will tell you, I always like, you can sleep when you die. That ain't God. Don't do that. Just sucked up and everything else, and you're pouring, but nothing's being poured into you. God gave us a Sabbath because we need to rest. So rest is important, and rest isn't necessarily just sleeping. Rest is plugging, taking time to enjoy, to connect. Like Adam and Eve, when God made Adam and Eve, they didn't just go to church. No, they fellowshipped. Fellowship. That's some intimate songs. What a joy to find, lean in. Lean into it a little bit. Lean in and allow your children to see you lean into love in a real place, right? To teach basic skills that aren't just, don't have sex because you don't have sex. No, teach me principles of it. Teach me physically what happens when I open these doors, emotionally what happens when I open these doors, and spiritually. Give me the balance. And I think a lot of times in spiritual parenting, balance is missed, because the other part of that is we always, I tend to see, and I've been a victim of this, the fixer and the spirit of control. Also, we put on that cape and we try to become the Christ in the parenting or in all of that. And then you begin to neglect things because you're walking in a mantle you weren't called to walk in. You can't be Christ. You can't carry the weight of sin. You can't carry the weight of the world. And so
my Lord,
that place then also brings additional trauma, because now you not taking care of home. You're not taking care of the natural gifts God's giving you, but you're gonna pour in some other soil. It's like it's almost like the infidelity of parenthood, right? And so you are cheating on me with somebody else's kids, but I'm here. And then not only am I here, I'm now raising myself. And while I'm raising myself, because I'm making decisions without wisdom and guidance, I'm now getting the backlash from the church because we're put on unnatural pedestals. And so we're having to be put in the front. And now I'm getting the backlash here. I'm neglected here. And the enemy's like, come on, baby, I got you over here. All because we walking in places we ain't got no business to walk in.
My Lord. Whee! That was a whole lot. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, because we have so many broken PKs or what have you. And a lot of their parents are spiritual parents. They're not just leaders in churches or pastors or what have you. They have actually been called to govern the lives of other spiritual children. And so when you're talking about that balance, that is so key, or what have you. I had to chuckle because I just was praying, and I had prayed that, hey, you gonna sleep when you get to heaven. What have you. But I definitely understand that balance and the need for balance. I know for myself, I have to be mindful of that sometimes. And so I'm very careful about what season I'm in. Is this a season to hustle and bustle for the Lord? Is this a season of constant momentum? What have you? And then just being okay if those that are in my team need to take a break, or and being okay with things. They'll say, I'm gonna go here on Sunday, I'm gonna do this on Sunday, and I'm okay with that. And there's even sometimes where I'll say, okay, we're not having a service today, or we're not having prayer today, to be mindful of those things. But also, if I am hustle and bustling in ministry, allowing them to come around me and still be with me. And they'll say, I need time. You're like, I need time. I don't want you to be writing while I'm doing it, or whatever. And I try to regard that, or what have you. But I definitely understand what you're saying, and we definitely need to work on that. So even me, I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna have to do a little better, even though I'm okay with it. I have to do a little better because it really is important. And even as you were saying, the whole world, I still have 90% of my life to live in the world. And so even as I'm learning these tools at church and or what have you, you have to teach me how to live in the world, and even trust what you're imparting into me, that I can navigate in the world. And then I need you out here with me as well, as a support, as a guide, as a guidance. And to be okay if I want to go to the dance, to be okay if I want to go to prom. So I thought that was excellent, and just even sharing that, how those things can cause trauma. And so even as we think about some of the PK kids that have the trauma, a lot of it is this. And one of the things that I have written a book called Annihilating the Powers of Church Hurt, plug, Unshamed plug, all right, that you can get on Amazon or kingdomshiftingbooks.com. And I talk about the preacher's kid, and I try to give an activation at the end of how to resolve conflict with that preacher's child. And often as a counselor, when I'm trying to counsel families where there's preachers' kids who have been hurt by the fact that the church has been put before them, or whatever, and they grew up that way, I'm trying to get that parent to see that kid's perspective, and even to be open to apologizing and regarding their heart, and on and on and on. But it's sometimes the parent can be so religiously focused, like, well, I'm doing the Lord's work. How you gonna be mad at me for doing the Lord's work? But even in the Lord's work, there has to be balance, and the home has to be taken care of first. There's no way around that truth. And if I am able to govern properly at home, then I can govern even more effectively at church. And a lot of times we're trying to govern in ministry without adequately governing properly at home. And then when we do when there is a realization or someone is trying to share with us, hey, this is not balanced, there, instead of becoming upset and challenged, there needs to be a listening and a regarding and even a searching yourself so that you can balance out and change. And so many PK kids have run from church because,
honey, a whole Florence Joyner split, like, goodbye. Don't talk to me about it. I know it. I could teach it better than you can. What I think though, in your series, what's going to happen, and it's unpopular opinion but facts, is that the way that we do church has set us up and really allowed the enemy to create foxholes in the impact of ministry. And what I mean by that is traditional settings or systems of church really drain and deplete ministers and their families. Like, it's, you got to be at every service, every meeting. And not only as a minister, you're really on call 24/7. Now, we look at these mega churches and a lot of people want to throw a lot of shade and all of that, but there's a lot of ministers in these mega churches that got their own streams of income. So one thing I'm going to say is stop attacking the preacher and get your facts right. Little plug there. Let me just say that, because I grew up in a ministry where we didn't have the money and they were okay with the pastor not having, but expecting the pastors to give 100. And so, you know, how you have your pastor on welfare is beyond me, but God always provided. But what happens is the children are watching. So I can remember the conversations in the fellowship hall and in the hallways where they dogging my parents out. But my parents is showing up for your kids at the courthouse. My parents is taking half off our plate so that y'all can eat. My parents are missing my softball games, or I'm having to find rides to stuff so my parents can show up for you all. And you got the nerve to put your mouth on them or attack their call. And we're watching these things, and unfortunately, not because the parents are bad, but it's a lot like the single mom who is literally doing everything she can to sustain and do these things together. The church, literally, these old systems drain the life out of ministries, drain the life out of their ministers, because we're doing programs. And it's a good thing, but it may not be a God thing. And what if God says it's time to flip the script? Go back to my word and gather when I tell you to gather. Other than that, get out in the marketplace and go get some disciples and walk with them. How many times was Jesus really preaching in a church? How many times did they have an annual usher day? These annual days, at least in the Black churches, were set up to fundraise. Well, how about we just become a New Testament church and give everything and divide as needed? Or how about we look at finances differently and begin to change our mindsets on how we approach it? Why? So that the pastor can really focus on releasing the word, that the evangelist can get out there and walk in what they're called to, that we can begin to disciple people the way, and the children who are really Levites, the line of Levitical priests that are coming through, don't run and become priests in demonic areas. And now you contending with it. Now you got to fight this because they don't release the song. Like, if you think, look at Wyclef Jean. He's a son of a Baptist preacher. This man has sounds and music and streams, and now it's contaminated because of strange fire. Look at Malcolm X and the influence this man had and the purpose, coming from a Baptist preaching line. But the wounds and the trauma and the fact that the church was more concerned about Robert's laws and rules of meetings than in ministering to one another, we lost one. And so we've got to begin to look at that. And I also say that to the parents too, because if you're not protecting your seed, the natural seed God is giving you, and those are your first spiritual children, if you're not protecting that, the enemy will send someone in to consume them for you. They'll do it and do it well. And
My
identity
Lord.
and trauma and purpose will all be given to the wrong kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Or you'll have situations where I know I'm coming out of a season, and thank God I had spiritual parents, because there'd be a lot of people waking up in the arms of God right now, right? But my spiritual parents, and I mean my natural and those that God has also sent to me, because see, and we'll go into this, seasons change, and there'll be some things my natural parents can't really speak to that spiritual parents can, because it's, it's like the auntie that can talk because John ain't listening to mom and daddy no more, or Sally ain't listening to daddy, she go to aunt. There'll be spiritual parents that are sent for the seasons. And so because of that, where I would have questioned everything, and this is what happens in a lot of preachers' kids, if we make it past high school, because usually at the point that we have a choice, if the trauma and the wounds are great, or the enemy has been allowed to ravish, we're either in prison, we're out there with 12 kids, or just we're running amok and not ever looking back. That when you look at Color Purple and Suge, she comes back in and eventually she comes back, but she's gone her own way. There is some trauma because Suge had been touched. Some folks had been in Suge's business that had no business being there, but daddy had his church. Now she loved daddy and daddy loved her, but daddy was so wounded, not understanding what pulled Suge away, that he couldn't go get it. Christ always goes back for the lost one. So go get your kids. Go get Gomer.
My Lord.
Coming back to that, when you look at the trauma of all of it, if we make it into adulthood, these traumas hit. Now we start questioning, well, what was real? I done watched all these other people live a hellion life and make money and all this. I've given my life to God. All of these things start to ravish us. And so, and I'm speaking from a preacher's kid's perspective, spiritual parents are needed, but if the foundation is strong enough, the word says that nothing comes back void. So that seed you plant has to come back. The fruit has to come. But if you are busy planting seeds in other gardens and you don't tend to yours, the weeds are always going to be there. The prodigal came back because the daddy had always planted a seed. And there was a garden for him to come back to. Some of us don't have gardens for your seeds to come back to, because you were busy planting and you were doing good things, but they weren't God things. And so even in all of this, begin to ask God, am I doing it your way, or am I doing it the way of the world? Am I still in the systems of the world? Maybe you need to only have cell groups in your ministry, and you start with your cell group with what God is telling you at home with your children.
My Lord.
So, like we have to look at what we're really doing and really begin to, even in the pandemic, right? It flipped the way we did churches, right? Because we can't be around each other. And so now church is like, well, we want you to come back. And people are like, I still get the word. Now, the word says forsake not the fellowship, but maybe we just got to do it different. Maybe we're not going to have a weekend program every week. We're not going to have conferences all the time. Maybe we are going to be strategic. And I believe God has given us the blueprint in the word on how to have strategic, impactful, intentional, discipling and miracle working, deliverance, healing, impactful sessions.
Yes.
There are Lydias, women of wealth, that are just waiting for you to come to their marketplace. They're not going to come. They don't have time. Their businesses don't allow it. But they're here and they're looking. Prince would fly in prophets. He flew in Kim Clement right before the concert. Now, Kim Clement could have got caught up, but Kim would always pray and release the power of God. Now, I don't know Prince's relationship, but look at the marketplaces. Because we didn't stay in the boundaries, I just took Christ where Christ said go. And some of us are just trying to say, no, Christ is here, come here, and you're not going to get him. And your kids ain't coming back because here is wounding.
Ooh.
And so as a spiritual parent, you've got to really gauge that. And you've also got to protect them from spiritual siblings that are leeches and that are trying to replace your children.
Come on and talk about that.
There's some boundaries, right? Because ain't nobody going to replace me. There's only one Elizabeth Lorraine Green Jackson in this family. Now, I got room and love for everybody, but ain't nobody going to replace me in Jackie and Anthony's life. Not today, not tomorrow, not never. Ain't nobody going to replace Joel, Joseph, Josh, y'all can't do it. Not going to happen. But there are those that have tried. Now our salvation was a process, so we nipped that in the bud, not necessarily the holy way all the time, but
how did you handle that? How did you handle that?
When we were younger,
Mm-hmm.
for the purposes of incrimination, I'm gonna leave that alone.
What about when you were older?
No, in all honesty, the communication was key. So younger, I don't think we always felt like we had the ability to say something. But what siblings know how to do, because we were raised that if one person does something, everybody get in trouble. So we policed each other. And so if you didn't get with that program, you wasn't gonna be in this program too much longer. We as siblings was gonna turn the heat up so much that you was gonna run out. And we were gonna make sure of it. So we learned how to police within the systems that we was living in. As an adult, or as someone who was much more mature, I know how to walk in discernment. And I also know how to speak truth. I have no problem. If I'm offended by you, I'm coming to you. But I'm coming in love, but I'm going to say, hey, this is this. You know, I love you, but I'm noticing this, or you're overstepping your boundaries in this place. And this is why I feel this way. Can we talk about it? And depending on the motive of that person, 99, that's right, no snitching, 99.9% of the time, it was never from that. The enemy was sometimes using because there's a spiritual sibling rivalry. It happens in the spirit. Everything loosed in heaven is loosed on earth, and loosed on earth, right? There's some principles that don't change. And so it's being able to have a conversation and love on each other and understand the roles, right? But if there was one whose motive wasn't right, we'll cast it out in a minute. But that's the benefit when you done taught your kids about demons, and when you done taught them about deliverance and the principles. When you water your own grass and you plant those seeds that you're preaching about, so that, because there's no one that will be able to talk to me or any of my siblings and question the call of God on my parents' life. Not near one. Because we know they love God and they live it behind closed doors more so than they do waking up. I remember times I wake up and go in my parents' room, and my mama was laying on the side of the bed on her knees. Her knees are bad now because that's how she lived. My dad had a stroke, and we went to the hospital, and while his mind was recovering, what didn't change was I was like, this is going on. He said, you look worried. Get the word. Let's pray. And he was trying to preach to us in a gown, right? Trying to escape the hospital and preach in a gown, because there are some things that are in you.
Come on.
Coming on, it's going to come out of you. And so when you're a spiritual parent, you've got to understand, you've got to put in the word so that your kids know it, your natural kids, and they live it. Our parents lived it. And so it's never been an issue. But because they lived it, it made it easier for us to love on those who weren't born of the same womb, but we have the same God. And the ones that didn't have the same God, the natural and the spiritual, we was quick to handle that. You're going to get saved or you're going to get out. Period. Yeah, that was it. That's how that goes. Okay.
That was awesome.
Please.
What'd you say?
So my nieces are on. What up, Niecey Poos? I love you.
Shout out to everybody that's on. Thank you for being here. And to spiritual family. They on here making sure you don't tell too much. You tell
I just telling myself. But you know what? That's the other thing. Like, you look at Eli and his sons, right? His sons was running the whole muck. Let me tell you about Bishop Green. Every time I cut up, she'd be like, sit down. One monkey don't stop the show. Sit down. And I done been sat down. A rebuke ain't new, but I'm going to get corrected. And I'm going to either make the choice on my own to follow God, or I'm going to walk in rebellion. But they would never allow us to contaminate the ministry. And some of the spiritual parents here are too afraid of the relationship with their children to walk in truth. And that's going to bring a judgment too. You've got to be willing to hold your kids accountable. And we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do good and bad. That's part of growth. Peter chopped off somebody's ear. He got a rebuke. Jesus put the ear back on, but Peter got in trouble. Peter was like, God, I'm riding for you. I'm savage. And Jesus was like, you finna bounce on me anyways. But Jesus still loved him. But he didn't change. He didn't change what he had to do. He didn't change his love for Peter. but he didn't allow Peter's silliness to divert him. And some of us get so caught up in the silliness of our kids, we get diverted and we miss the mark. Because Peter came back around, he was a rock. But his spiritual father finished his assignment. He understood the assignment.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't get caught up on your spiritual kids or your children. You love them, but you still got to walk in the truth of God and the love of God, regardless of the seasons.
Yes, that's so awesome. And one of the things I have been trying to hone in on as I have been doing this series is making sure people know that the relationship is not perfect, but you walk it out together. And so many people will leave the relationship when they start to have contention, but the whole purpose of coming into Christ likeness is that you work through that contention and come through it. And so if you make a mistake, I'm not throwing you away, whatever. Yes, do you need to sit down and, go through some inner healing and deliverance or what have you. And then, once you get that, you can get back up and begin to, walk in your gifts or what have you. Yes. But that sit down is for your good so that you can focus on you and God and being restored. And so many people will get angry because they're being set down and now they want to go have a whole nother spiritual parent or go to a whole nother church and lead the process. But that process is going to follow you to that next church, to that next leader, to that next or what have you, because the whole point of the spiritual parent relationship is that you come into the likeness of Christ. And so that is so essential. And then it's so important. The other point that I continue to hone in on, I'm going to say on here, a spiritual parent cares about your soul. So even what you were saying is, my mom and my dad didn't care that I was a biological child more than they cared about my soul being made well. So yes, can I sing? Can I dance? Can I preach, prophesy, cast the devil out? Yes. But if my soul is not right with the Lord, sit down so that you can get that soul right and be in right standing with God, not doing a whole bunch of religious works when you about to go to hell. Because somebody
wide open. But and the other principle with that too, Eli, when you don't bring correction, Eli lost his sight. How are you going to be a parent and you can't see? Eli lost the ability to see, and he knew God, but that relationship shifted. So now you leading people blind, and it brought a curse on the children and the people. So if you as a spiritual parent don't sit down, and spiritual kids, when we get sat down, it's for our good. Otherwise, you're going to be operating in curses. It could cost you your life. Why? The wages of sin is death. That principle don't change. Grace don't fix that. But the gift of God is eternal life. There's no, like, you have to understand the principle of that. So if you continue to operate in that, when grace lives, you're going to want that mercy. You're going to want that good mercy, but you better pray you wake up to get it. And so parenting, and even as a former law enforcement officer, I found that parents who were afraid to parent their kids, they were more busy being friends. Their kids ended up in prison or dead or in lost purpose because they were afraid to be uncomfortable or to make those hard choices. And so you have to, it will cost you more than you will gain if you don't parent your children. And children that are listening, the word says, honor your father and mother, that your days may be long upon the earth. What does that mean? All that back talking, rolling your eyes. They can't tell me nothing. I'm grown, or I do this. She ain't even here. She not looking. You bring a curse on yourself. You shorten your life by not adhering, even spiritually. What does that mean? My mom ain't never been nothing. She a crackhead. Honor your father and mother. It didn't say honor the good ones or the bad ones. It says honor. And to honor means to respect. You don't got to agree with it. You may not be in the home with them, but you must bring honor. The principle of life is attached to that. And so if you cutting up and you're being disrespectful or all of those things, you're setting yourself up. And fathers and parents, provoke not your children to wrath. That goes back to the spiritual parenting and the balance. You giving all the money away. You giving your time away to everyone but me. Who am I going to run to? What emotions are you opening me up to? So it's not just about physical abuse. There's an emotional, a spiritual, there's a mental demand and expectation that is placed on you. If you're going to be a parent, step up. Step up and step in. There's an expectation that is placed on you. Raise them up in the nurture and ammunition of the Lord. Like, you have a responsibility to do what's godly. And a lot of times we are trying to live and operate in our own way, but God established parenthood. God established marriage. God established gender. God established these things. So when we go into other places, Dr. Seuss, Dr. Spock, Dr. Phil, Oprah, all these people have opinions, but that's not what the law of God is. Therefore, it don't last. It doesn't have the same impact. It could be good. It's probably not. And you're not getting the destiny, the identity, and the purpose that you were God intended for, because you were going to other sources for what only God can give you. And clearly Jesus knew how to have a good time, because he turned water into wine. So Jesus knew how to kick it. So it ain't all boring. Jesus knew how to have fun. At weddings, they were dancing and everything else. Jesus ate. He was at the beach. So he wasn't always at the church. So yes, I can be godly. I can chase and love God, and I can still enjoy the gifting and the beauty of that God has given us. But at no point did Jesus ever neglect nurturing. He was there with his disciples. When they were in the water, he was with them. One of them cried out. He got out there. Come on, boo. Give me your hand. Walk on water. Give me your hand, boo. Come on. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, an opinion. That's so true. Opinions are not of the law of God. I say opinions and behinds. Everybody has a behind and an opinion, and they're both usually full of the same thing. You fill that in. And so, yeah, we don't want an opinion. We want the fact and the law of God. Sorry.
Yes.
So I can say it.
Yes, and anything that's void of the Spirit of the Lord is only going to bring measure, or that's going to return to something void at some point. And so that is one of the key as well. And even as we have so many people going forth on Facebook Lives, and we're putting up posts every day, there's a difference in, where you're just receiving knowledge, but when you're receiving transformation. And so that is what God brings. He brings transformation, not just revelation. And so that's why a lot of times we can just listen to stuff, but we're not transformed, because the Spirit is void of the Spirit of God, or the motive and principles of God. And so definitely. Are there any questions as we are talking? I haven't seen any so far, but if you have questions for Apostle Liz, please ask them. This is a good time to ask. While they're getting questions, I'm going to ask a question. So as you have had to embrace your parents being spiritual parents, what experiences have you seen them go through with striving to bring spiritual children into mindedness and into the Christ likeness that they're supposed to come into? What challenges have you seen, and even how has that impacted you and your siblings?
So my parents are very unique in that they balance each other on how they minister together and yet separate. And so when you say challenges, I don't know that I've seen challenges specifically like to mentoring or loving. Well, I will say this. I have seen the pain of betrayal. I've seen the pain of disappointment. I've also seen the power of love and forgiveness and reconciliation. And so I was very grateful to be able to watch the seasons, because like all kids, we get in our feelings, We feel some kind of way because we see some kind of thing and we say what we want to say. You say what you said. I felt how I felt and we did what we did, right? And so I've seen that cycle, but I've also seen the ability, and it's a supernatural ability. And so this is a true testament of spiritual parents, because you have to have an ability to love as if it's your own. There's a grace when your own kids start to cut up and they do stuff to hurt you. You're like, I'm gonna stick by him. I'm gonna stick by him. That one's mine. I'm gonna stick by him, right? And they've devastated your heart. But now this is someone you poured into, and they've turned their cheek and tooted and booted on you, and drug your name through the mud. And it's kind of like, well, go on then, kick rocks. But that was not my parents' journey. They said, okay, they'll be back. And when they came back, they were met with love. And that was huge. And it wasn't the okay, like, it happens. There was pain and there was hurt, because when you pour into something, or when you love someone deeply, and when you invest time that you can't get back, and it came with a sacrifice. I'd have missed some things to love on you. I've given you things I've cherished to build on you. I've poured time and talent. I've cried and wept, and it culminated to you leaving and dragging me, betraying me. And then God meets them wherever they are, and some things happen. And when they come back, it's a big deal to come back, because when you cut up, you're like, oh Lord, right? I've watched my parents meet people time and time again with love and forgiveness. And that has been huge, especially in the seasons I think my siblings and I have watched. We've had to be faced with some of those same journeys, but had we had not seen it, I don't think we would have navigated those as well. I think I've also in this season, I've been fortunate enough in this place in my life that my parents have shared with us the mistakes. And parenting don't come with the handbook. It comes with the word of God, but there's not a human handbook. So I know what the word says, but when my flesh get to cutting it, there are some things we make as mistakes. And so it's been nice to have that transparency. And as a spiritual parent, you've got to be willing to be transparent on the highs and the lows of your journey, because I'm going to hit those too. And if I don't have anyone to help me gauge, not only am I not a failure because I hit a low, but this is how you navigated that, I have a place of reference for redemption. And it was very key that in their journey, raising up spiritually and just naturally, as a woman or as a man, and then as a parent, or just as a coach, these are the things that I navigated, and I did this well. But if I could go over and do this, this is where I messed up. I would have done this differently. As a parent, Liz, Joel, Joseph, and Josh, Kevin, Glenn, I would have done these things differently. And I would have loved differently. I would have seen it. I might not have been at the church so much. I might not have said this the way I said it. I might have navigated my frustrations of ministry differently. But being able to talk about it, and then as a spiritual child, being able to ask and say, hey, I'm struggling, because I know you're a safe space. So if you create a safe space, your kids will always go to you. If you're not a safe space, I'm going to go somewhere else. But to my spiritual siblings, or to those who are daughters or sons, when I got pregnant with Isaiah and I was not married, I was hiding it, honey. I wasn't saying nothing. Now, unbeknownst to me, so it's a funny story, but unbeknownst to me, eventually my dad had known, because my mom told him, my mom and dad will never keep secrets. They always made it very clear to us, not a single child comes before our marriage or our union. Don't try and play us. So if I asked my mom and she said no, and then we went and asked my dad and he found out, we was getting a whooping. Or if I ask one parent and then they was like, oh, you try to play us, you getting a whooping. You don't come before us. Some of y'all haven't established them boundaries. Y'all putting your kids before your spouses. And you wondering why your marriage messed up and your home off balance. Your kids ain't your sibling, ain't your spouses. And your spouses aren't your children. So that's a freebie. That's a golden nugget. But
that was free. Take that and put it in the front of your Bible.
Yeah, fix it.
And keep reading it.
When you got married, it was you, your spouse, and the Holy Spirit. It wasn't your kids. And I don't care if you had kids before. Don't get married if you can't trust the leadership of your spouse. If you think that your spouse is not going to love your children or you can't trust the decisions they make, you ain't got no business marrying them. They don't come first.
My Lord.
All right. But going back to that, when we would come to them, I was hiding it and my dad would try and set it up. He was setting it up. Like he always listened to jazz when he was writing his sermons. So late at night, my brothers and I knew if we heard jazz, we'd go sit with Pop. He put his albums on. He used to be a DJ. So we would listen to the music. So we would sometimes, my dad was good for scenarios. So he'd be talking and I wasn't saying nothing. I was like, I'm not ruining the family. We just gonna get through Christmas. I'm gonna hide this baby. I'm wrapping my stomach tight, just hiding everything. So it was my birthday, and my dad gave me, I love Goofy. He gave me a Goofy phone, and he handed it to me. And you're pregnant, you already emotional. But I put the Goofy down, and I went to hug him. And when I held him, he held me tighter. And he says, "Baby, when you're in trouble, you run to the Father, not from him." And he says, "I already know, and I already love you more." And so I say that to those who are listening to me. Your spiritual parents and your parents love you. And you should run to them. They are the representation of the Father's love here on earth. And so having secrets or I can't tell you the messes that would have been had I not gone to my parents first to deal with it before it blew up. If you are going to call somebody mama and daddy, then you got to trust them to love you in that place. And if you don't have the relationship, God will send you a spiritual mom, a spiritual dad who will love you, but it requires trust. And it requires you to be transparent and to run to them, but run to the Father, not from him when you're in trouble. He loves you. There's nothing that will separate you from the love of God. Nothing can snatch you out of his hand. As far as the east is from the west, he separated you from the sin. Run to the Father when you are in those places so he can just wrap you. And when you need a natural hold, that's where your parents come in. They represent his love. And that means that just like God has a right hand, he has a left hand. So there's the hand of blessings and there's a hand of correction. So getting corrected is love. Getting loved on is love. God is a God of balance. And so for my spiritual siblings, the daughters and the sons, just embrace that process. Embrace the rebuke. Embrace the love. Sometimes you get uncomfortable because they're blessing you and you're like, I'm not used to being blessed. Let that blessing come in and warm and build your spirit. Get that blessing and get that correction so you can have balance because you're called to parent. There's no wasted seeds. Everything that's implanted in you, you're going to multiply and go greater. And spiritual parents, you should want your kids to go further than you and do better. We know better, so we do better. And so they're supposed to. There's supposed to be a greater work in what you're putting in. And so that's that principle of it. Okay, I went on a tangent. I love y'all. I'm just excited. Like I was blessed.
That was so powerful. Thank you for that, Liz. That was so excellent. Even just talking about the love of a father. And so when you think about spiritual parents, you're running to the love of a father. You're running to God's love and his safe place for you to be loved. And even how that love can be rebuked or just love and just emotional wellness, but you're getting both. You're getting the balance of God's love and in the importance of embracing both. So thank you for that. That was powerful. And even as you were talking about how we need to make sure that our spiritual children go further then we go. That is so important. And I even want to just say, be okay if your children don't go through everything you went through to get there. And so a lot of things that I am doing and paving the way for is so they won't have that warfare. They won't have that persecution. They won't have those problems. And a lot of times we are saying, you got to go through what I got through to get the oil. And I haven't really seen that in the Bible yet. If anybody got a scripture on it, show it to me. Because really, a heart of a parent is that you don't go through what I went through. So if there's anything that I can do to make sure you don't go through the trials and tribulations that I go through, I'm going to try to pave the way for that. And then I want you to go to be greater than what I was. And that's the whole reason for the spiritual parenting, is so that I can position you to be greater than me. So all of this jealousy, and if you have parents that are jealous of you and are holding you back because they don't want you to go further, and all of these things, you want to make sure that you're under the right spiritual parent, because they should always want you to have the double portion, and they should always be positioning you to have that mantle so that it didn't mesh with the mantle that is already up on you, so that you can be greater than what they are. And so thank you so much. Is there any other nuggets you would like to share before we end?
I just love y'all. I think that we often see in our nation how we've dismantled many of God's systems and put them in for the world systems. And so when you find that you're wrestling with something or you don't have peace, I would recommend you go to the Word of God, and you can Google it now and ask, what does God say about XYZ? Because that's where you're going to find peace. Even in parenting, you can't spank, you can spank, you can't do timeout, you can do time. It just, everybody has an opinion or a perception, but everybody ain't listening to God. And so my nugget for parents and for children is to go back to the Word. It's really simple. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, and your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so in loving God with all your heart, your mind, and your soul, what happens? You become transformed and you love yourself the way He loves you. And so when I love myself the way He loves me, I begin to understand self-love and respect and wholeness and healing. And it puts a demand on me. But now I'm not going to be raggedy to my neighbor, because I'm not going to do to you what I used to do, because I don't see myself the way the world sees me. I don't see myself the way maybe my natural parents or aunts and uncles curse me. I see myself through the Father's eyes. There's a power in the love of a father. There's a power in the love of a mother. And we see when that balance is missing, there are pieces of our destiny that are missing. And so, my prayer is, and Joel, you said it so well, spiritual parents put a demand on you. And if you're not getting a demand, then that season with those parenting, with that parent, may be shifting. You might need a new demand. Because why? His mercies are new every morning. Behold, all things are made new. So there should be a newness that's coming upon me daily, renewing my mind. There should be something new in God being birthed in me daily. And it doesn't have to be all didactic and everything, but there should be something new, a new level of love, a new level of forgiveness, a new level of peace, a new level of study, a new ability of writing, a new ability of dance, a new ability in finance. There should be something new developing, because those are the godly principles of God. And so when you're stagnant and you're stale, who's fathering you? They used to be like, whose child is this? Whose child are you? Get you some parents. Don't get milk. Get you a mama. Get you a daddy. Ask God to send it so that you can get nurtured and get that demand and that double portion and that destiny unlocked. Because that's what it looks like. Moses' mom, for a season, had to put him in the lake, in the river. My God. And somebody else raised him, but God brought him back. So for the mothers and the fathers that have had to release their children for a season, it ain't the end. God ordained every season. Don't walk in condemnation. Children, when your parents aren't there, we don't know what God was protecting from. If Moses' mother had kept him, he'd be dead. If your mom or dad would have kept you in the situation you were in, you might be dead. You might not have reached the potential you had. So you're going to have to release and forgive them. Release it and know that all things work together for the good of those who love them. He has plans to prosper you and not to harm you. And so maybe staying in that situation was going to kill you or take you out. And God intervened. So just be encouraged today. I don't know what your journey is. I don't know. I can tell you what, I had amazing parents and I still made a lot of mistakes. So don't allow your past to dictate your presence or your future. It's in God's hands.
We need an altar call. Can we call an altar call on this one?
Call it. The doors of the church is open.
The doors of the church is open.
Right in your living room, your car, your house, or the store. Come on. That marketplace ministry. Where you at?
We need an altar call. Lord have mercy. That was powerful. I definitely agree. That word about milk was crazy. Don't just drink milk. Get you a real mama and a daddy. That part. So yeah. Yes. And just even I could see Moses where he was with his mama for a season, but hey, he gonna die here. So I'm gonna be that mother to say, oh, you need more than what I can give you. I'm gonna put you in the lake and trust that you evolve and you get the right nurturing so that you can evolve in what you need. And being okay with being that child that has to go down that lake to be nurtured by someone else to come up into what and shift up to what God is trying to raise you to be. Because so many times we keep running back to the milk, and the milk is not bringing us, helping us to grow into what we need to be. So that
and you know, that he went to the palace, right? He was in Pharaoh's house, but he had to understand the systems of Pharaoh. And even though it was good sometimes, right? But then it ended up, he had to run because he ended up murdering somebody. He had to go back to the very same place that had him captive to bring about deliverance. So you may not understand it right now, but your journey is giving you the tools because God is calling you to the very place you keep trying to run from. Be still and sit down. Sit down and get what you got to get so you don't got to repeat the cycle. Because Moses ran over, got him a wife, was hiding in the desert and said, come on up here. The Lord said, come here. A whole fiery bush. And then Moses like, but I do this and I do that. He's like, I got you. Just take the stick. Take the stick and go against Pharaoh and his army. But God is so good. Moses went with his siblings. And his siblings walked with him. So God brings it full circle. Whatever you need, God is going to give to you. Your blood does not look like much right now. But let me tell you, all it takes is one touch. One touch, awesome. You will deliver a nation.
My Lord.
You got God's DNA. Kendrick Lamar hit it with that song, but man, he ain't know about that DNA from God. Come on.
Awesome. Do you have a moment to just talk about what blessings of having spiritual siblings has brought into your life? Because so many times the spiritual children are rivaling instead of gathering together and loving on one another, getting to know one another and all of that. So what blessings has it been to have? Because your parents have lots of spiritual children.
Man, I have so many. So I didn't have sisters growing up, and now I'm like, it's a multitude. You know what that means? Everybody can help in the kitchen. Everybody get to help write books. Everybody else get to help break down. I got spiritual brothers, man. It's so good. Come on, jump in on this work. So what it has done is really built a huge family. And so one of the things, because of the seeds of my parents, my brothers and I, and our children are benefiting from that seed. And we ain't do nothing to get that. So where my parents have opened the doors and loved on people, there have been times where my siblings and I needed somewhere to live in college or needed help. And people are like, oh, that's your mom and dad? We got it. That's your grandparents? We got it. Those seeds harvest. And if you know anything about planting seeds, those things germinate, right? And so they begin to reharvest, right? So that thing multiplies. And so you begin to see that. And where in the places I could not bless my parents or bring honor, my spiritual siblings step in, and it's a beautiful community. And so I now I'm in the mix, of Apostle T. I got scribes and therapists. I have doctors. I have corporate people working in corporate America. There are people of wealth. There are people who are amazing parents, right? Access to things I would not have other had. The quiver is full. And for those of you who don't know what a quiver is, it's what they would carry all their arrows in. We got a full quiver. We got a whole way to attack the enemy. And so when I can't reach mama, I can call some other folk now. I don't have to drain mama and daddy anymore. I got an army. And so the benefits of it have been love and fellowship and the army of family, the army of God, the kingdom family. There ain't nothing like it. Ain't nothing like it. I'm telling you, get you some kingdom sisters and some kingdom brothers. Y'all turn up and have a good time. And the ability to be human. And when I'm broken, because sometimes you don't call mom and dad. My brothers will be there. My sisters will be there. And so there's a safety net. And that's been the blessing of it.
Thank you for that. We'll have to come back and talk about how to build that safety net, because so many have a lot of spiritual children, but they're not really cultivating the extended family of it, or that portion, or even teaching the siblings how to communicate and love one another, and on and on. I know that when me and my team first came under your parents, when they began to oversee my ministry, we had never seen a representation of the love and communication and support and embracing one another from any other ministry outside of ourselves until we came under you all. And we just thought it didn't exist. We didn't just build this, this family unity and culture that just doesn't exist. But then when I came under you all, it existed, and then it was like huge,
Everybody.
Yes. And so when I got ordained, I, outside of my team and my mentor that was there, and I believe, a couple of other people, I didn't know none of the people that were in the room, because they were all my overseers, spiritual family and mentees and on and on. But I felt like everybody in there knew me, knew my journey. And, they was for me. And like the whole room, was just happy about what was happening to me. And that had just really healed some things in me, because they wasn't looking at me like, oh, she getting ordained, who she thinks where she come from? It's just like, we happy for you. Your hair red.
Got another witness. Yeah. And we was like, somebody else to do some work. Hey.
Yes. And so, So, and a lot of times when I'm counseling people about spiritual parenting relationship, they're talking about, well, it was like a cult, or it was like this. And I'm like, it's not supposed to be that way. And there are some spiritual parents out there who have a healthy culture in their ministries or among their spiritual family, but it's hidden, so even you being here today is exposing how this actually occurs, and it can occur even in a multitude of spiritual children and still be healthy. So thank you for being here today. Thank you.
Y'all want family? We here. We love family. Y'all
yes.
And come work.
You said come do some of this work.
Love and hanging out, but it's also gonna be some chair moving, some deliverance. Go get you some towels, and then you're gonna have to write like 12 books once you get all these. I filtered my book writing through my siblings.
You filtered that, Norton?
I filtered it through there.
Yes, you gonna work.
Mhm.
That part is gonna be part of the, you know, the upbringing. So yes, yes, awesome. All right. So where can people find you?
Everywhere.
She everywhere, y'all.
Everywhere. Currently, I attend church in Redlands at the Village SBC. I'm
Mm-hmm.
420 East Stewart. You can find us on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can log on to the Village SBC on Facebook, or you can find us on the YouTube also. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Bishop right now is preaching powerful words on the book of
Yes.
Proverbs. Get wise or get full. Listen, if y'all didn't do last night, if y'all missed yesterday for sons and daughters, because she preached
Mm-hmm.
about the lovers to warn your sons and daughters about. And when I tell you she
Girl.
was dropping them pearls, if y'all could go on and find that YouTube link and look up the Village SBC.
Mm-hmm. The Village SBC. And
It
you're
was
looking for,
worth it. It was
yeah,
powerful. Please, it was man. We might need
yeah.
to stream that again because it was so powerful. But that's what we do. That's where you can
Mm-hmm.
find me. Otherwise, I'm usually just kind of hanging out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mind my business and drink water and
Awesome,
carry out
awesome.
miracles. And I pray and I love on people too.
Yes, yes, yes. Liz is very involved in her mom's and her dad's ministry, so she do a lot of work for them. So yes, so when she's telling you to go to those services, she there. All right, and her mom and dad are also on Wednesday nights too.
Yeah,
So
7
please,
p.m.
yes, and that's the same at the Village SBC. So please, please. Find her. And I'll have her back. I'll try to have her back in a couple of weeks. Maybe we can talk about successorship and then also talk about how to build healthy family community and other things because she is very wise and as you can see, full of the word. So thank you for being here and for just blessing us. And if you want to learn more about understanding spiritual parenting relationships, attend my webinar. Okay. I was just kind of interviewing today, but I'll actually be teaching. And then also, one of my spiritual children will be teaching, and she will be teaching from a perspective of a spiritual child. And it's going to be great. Okay. And you want to get the book. The book is about 260 pages. All right. And Apostle Jackie Green wrote the foreword. So Liz's mom wrote the foreword.
That's
And if
like
you
60
put her
pages right there.
Yes, it was about 3 pages. She should have went on and wrote a book, okay? But when she put her signature on it, you know God on it, okay? And one of the things I love about her is when I send her a book to do a forward on, she gives me feedback and she'll go back and say, write on this, write on that, write on this, or this scripture is a little off, or you stretching it right here, you know? And so I love that my books are actually biblically sound because she makes sure I'm not just putting out good information or something that sounds good, but that is coming from the throne room. Okay, so please get that book and get one of these other books behind me. I have written over 50 books. Liz touched a lot on church hurt as a PK, and I have written a book called Annihilating the Powers of Church Hurt. So
I got
you
that
will,
one. It's an awesome book. Yes, I do.
yes, yes, and I deal a lot about how to heal in those areas. Church hurt is real, but you can be healed. Okay, there's nothing you
Hey,
cannot be healed from.
Renita, that's a shirt.
Say it again.
Renita, that's a shirt. Get it on.
Yes, Renita, we need that shirt. So don't nobody steal it. Still that ideal, but church hurt is real, but you can be healed. So thank you all for being here. We'll see you Saturday, and I also will be back next Tuesday, and I will be interviewing Apostle Eric Warren again. How to build spiritual children, build, BUILD. So that's going to be great. And then I will actually get a flyer out of when Liz is going to come back and be with us. So thank you all for being here, and we will see you on Saturday at the webinar.
Love you
And
guys.
Love you all. Bye.